Interestingly enough, that's not the face I was shown when it comes to WSU Kim at all. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer, everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only, and just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, episode 2. If you missed my assessment and review of episode 1 of this whole cyber sleuths Paramount Plus docuseries that they did on the Idaho 4 case, it's in the description box, and now we're moving on, and yes, I'm doing my her. All right. Your girl's busy. Your girl has a life. Your girl has very little personal time to do things for herself. So we're going to do all of this all together. I have another 9 pages, guys. 9 pages. 9 pages. So let's see just what I actually found in this. Instantly, they are tainting public perception of the so-called suspect because they are showing a man depicting Bryan bending down, taking trash out of a trash can with black gloves on, the way that we heard that he was arrested. Like, the way that they're literally trying to reenact things is a little crazy to me. Now, this is where they show Rory from Thou Shalt Not Kill, which, again, has also been MIA. Now, he showed up in a chat during the... I can't remember what it was, but it was here recently. He showed up in a chat and commented on something in a live chat, but he has not been doing anything on his channel. And he is also part of the team. And again, this all goes back to around the Linda Lane time, okay? He was also part of the team that apparently called the owner of the Linda Lane apartments where the stuff came from and was talking with Brett Norton and Riley Lively. And there was a live that he did with those girls. And it was about the Dot situation. Now, apparently Dot shows up in the next episode. Cool. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this because my intros... already, done it. Kim shows up later on in this episode, but I'm going to tell you guys right now, right the frick now, that is not the face of the woman that I was shown. No. See, Drunk Turkey, who apparently vetted her, showed me after I was on a live with them before, okay? Not only did he tell me a couple things from whenever he did the interview with Kaylee's mom, Christy, that I haven't said because I don't know if he has said these things on his channel. I don't really watch them, so I don't really know, and that's just the truth. And me saying that doesn't mean that I have beef with those channels. I am my own channel. I'm not a viewer. I don't have to go and watch everybody's stuff. That's not how I have original content. That's how people have copycat content. So me saying that I don't watch Drunk Turkey isn't a dig, okay? I don't really have time to watch anybody. I'm an extremely busy person, okay? So again, I don't know if he said the things on his channel that he told me on the back end when it comes to the roommates and the activities between the two of them during... I don't know if he said any of those things. So I'm leaving all of that alone for now. But he showed me the Facebook profile of the woman that was supposed to have been Kim. And this woman who showed up on this show is not the same person. Now, ironically enough, she's wearing a pearl necklace very similar to the one in the Facebook profile picture that I was shown. The woman that I was shown was probably in her late 40s, early 50s, but she looked pretty well for her age. You could tell her age. She had a pearl necklace on. She had a red blazer type situation happening, and she had blonde hair. Okay, this is not this woman. I have had a perception in my mind based off what I was shown for all this time now, since Kim was a thing, since she was vetted by these channels, okay? Whenever I hear her voice on anything that she, her clips are being played on, when I'm reading a comment that she leaves, when I'm reading a chat that she's leaving on someone's live that she's in the chat, okay? I see a face that I was shown. This was not it. Now, I asked him, and I've asked Dago, and I've asked several people who have claimed to have talked to Kim and gotten proof about things from Kim if she ever showed her face to them. And every single one of them told me no. Now, apparently there was a time where a camera slip happened, and I was told that she looked like the woman in the Facebook photos. But that's not true, because that's not this woman. Now, yeah, she could have dyed her hair and stuff, but that's not the face, guys. I'm telling you now. This is not the face that I was shown. This is not the face that I've had in my head this entire time after being shown the Facebook profile that she was claiming was hers. Because you guys have to remember, this Facebook profile that was vetted led back to a girl that went to the school, that knew, all of the connections that needed to be there in order to prove something. But that was it. She never proved who she was with her face until this Paramount thing. Well, now I just don't believe. This is a difficult situation for me because there's so much about this case that doesn't make any sense. But the way that Kim has done things has made me not believe that there was people showing up at the house before the cops were there. Even though I honestly kind of believe that there was, because I have a lot of questions about Dylan and Bethany. But this whole thing with Kim has just upset me, and it's upset a whole bunch of people because she has yet to show physical proof. Okay? And honestly, guys, before we move on to the rest of this, I'm just going to say this now. If anything that she is saying is true, do you think that she would be able to legally be out here talking not only on YouTube and TikTok and everywhere else, but also being freaking interviewed by Paramount? She would be under a gag order. Like, come on. Now, the only way, and I'm just prepared for this because I know that, like, she's real quick at making stuff up, and there's other people that are real quick at making stuff up. She, and I've talked about this, and I'm probably going to get her running her mouth, and I'll get threats and all kind of stuff like I always do every single time I try to have a conversation about the problems I have with this whole thing. She came out and said on Melissa Jade's channel, which, by the way, I will be on a live with her in a couple of days, like later on this week, probably Wednesday evening. I'm going to join her on a live talking about this whole thing. So be ready for that. But she was on there and she specifically told Melissa that her kid refused to sign a statement, that nothing was done like legally. Like, she's claiming that she sent information over to the cops, but then she's claiming that her kid never signed a statement. Her kid refused to talk to the cops. And apparently her daughter doesn't talk to her anymore because she's doing all this crazy stuff. Well, that was just the narrative that we were given whenever so many creators were asking to talk to Kim's daughter. All of a sudden, her daughter wasn't talking to her. So now it just makes me like disbelieve her even more because the face that I'm seeing doesn't match. But I still have a lot of issues with the timeline itself and what really happened. That's why all of this is so conflicting, and people that put themselves into cases like this are completely just, they're inhumane, honestly, because these things are already so intense. And then they want to just add an extra level of stupidity to it. And like I've mentioned, okay, if there's no concrete proof, then shut up. Shut up. And nothing has happened. Nothing has been proven. There's been no timestamps, no phone calls, no anything that she's proven. Anyone can, call a number and have a conversation. It doesn't mean that what you're telling them is valid. It doesn't mean that anything that you've said is actually real and being taken seriously. And as much as they've already threatened, like, Vargas by sending the FBI to her house, and as much as they've already told Steve, like, literally called and told Steve, hey, you need to stop talking to people, okay? You think they would just let Kim out here doing all this stuff if it was all true? Hell no. Hell no. And I also found it really interesting that Paramount decided to do, like, the one thing that Judge has been complaining about this entire time when it comes to media and the cameras. When they were talking about how Bryan was arrested and they go, Bryan, Christopher, Kohberger. They do the thing that I sometimes do where I, by step, zoom in on my face. Okay, well, that's the one thing that Judge had a problem with. So all Paramount did was, like, prove the point of why the court system actually does need to be the ones in control of the cameras, because they don't care. They're going to just intentionally do the opposite of what they're told. Of course. They bring up the survey, and that is something that I really wish sometimes I didn't have a full-time job. Even though I know that I'm, like, really lucky to have this job because I make decent money at this job and I'm really good at this job and it's sort of easy. Like, my brain's just sort of on, like, you know what I mean? After having the same job for so long, you're kind of just like, it's routine, right? But I really wish I had more time because I would love to just super dig into those surveys because I find it really interesting, and I always have, the concept that he was going after, which is not really like, what would you do in the commission of the crime to not get caught? It's literally like, how are you feeling while you're doing these things? how are your emotions? What's your thought process while you're doing it to control? It's more like the emotional control and the emotional like response while in the activity of the crime, not like how you really feel afterwards. Of course, the whole like remorse thing was obviously like a situation, but it's more like your emotional state in the process of committing, which is interesting because he's also apparently, from people that know him, he's sort of like Sheldon Cooper when it comes to reading social cues and understanding human emotions, which, if anything that we saw from, the whole visual snows thing that was found that he apparently wrote a long time ago is true, then that's a pretty accurate, like way to, I guess, like describe the way that he is and the way that he feels that he is. So then whenever you take that and you mix it with the survey asking those questions, I mean, you can kind of put them together. But then just like the one correspondent on the show said, just because you're enthralled with the criminal system and just because you're so interested in what's happening doesn't instantly make you like a suspect or somebody that could do something completely heinous, because you'd have to say the exact same thing about me, about Ashley Banfield, about all these TikTokers in this show. You'd have to say that they could easily just go off and do something crazy like stab 4 people to death in the middle of the night simply because we like following crime stories and digging into the justice system and putting puzzle pieces together and trying to, figure things out and get stories told and figure out how everything is unfolding as it goes. You just can't. The whole Indiana stop thing comes up, and that's another thing that we've always had so many questions on because, and I'm glad that they mentioned it in this, because the FBI, like it was reported by Fox, as Paramount stated, that the FBI orchestrated the entire thing. But then less than a week later, the FBI came out with a statement saying that they didn't. But that wasn't mentioned in here. As far as I can remember, I don't recall Paramount then mentioning, but then the FBI came out and said it wasn't them. Okay, so we all know that. We all know that have been following this case know damn well that a week later the FBI took that statement and said, nope, we didn't do anything. We didn't orchestrate anything whatsoever. And because of that, so many people are questioning, well, then how did you even know who Bryan Kohberger was? Because if you knew that he was the suspect, how the hell did you let him go across the country? But him getting stopped back to back within a few miles of each stop within a certain time frame, it is suspicious. And it was even more suspicious that in these body cams is the first time we hear about Brent Kopacka, like ever. And I've always mentioned this, as many eyes were on that area, somehow they kept the entire Brent Kopacka situation under wraps until that body cam was released. I don't know how the hell they managed that. And now they're talking about the imaginary cuts on his hands. Guys, I'm so tired of this conversation. I really honestly am. And again, this is just my opinion, okay? But he went to a doctor and he went to a hairdresser and he went to all these places, including his classroom, after the situation, okay? If he had cuts and stuff on him like that, don't you think that they would be coming out and saying all of that? The hairdresser has talked. There was no injuries on him that she could see that were visible. There's been people that he was a TA in the class for that have come out and made statements. He didn't have any visible wounds whatsoever, not on his face, not on his hands. He didn't have a limp. He wasn't trying to like cover up anything. He would just get kind of quiet whenever the crime was brought up. But he didn't have any visual injuries. So for people to sit there and say that in this body cam a whole, 45 freaking days later, they see cuts on his hands, no, freaking delusional. Now, I can tell by the comments on my previous video about episode 1 that a lot of people were kind of taken aback by the fact that Ann Taylor used to work for the prosecutor's office. That's actually not too surprising to me. It's really not too surprising to me. I'm actually kind of surprised that no one's mentioned that. Now, some of you guys might have known that. I didn't know that. But then again, it's not really surprising. It's not. I've heard of it like several times. Lawyers that worked for one side flipping to the other, and it's normally the prosecutor's office flipping over to the other side. Who mentioned this? Jenna, the Jenna girl. She mentioned how that might actually be sort of beneficial because Ann Taylor knows the way that the prosecution side works. But then again, in my mind, you know, because I always somehow see both sides of stuff. With as crazy as this case is, she could have also been assigned for a reason because they've been agreeing on things they shouldn't be agreeing on. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that there. I do find it interesting, too, that retired captain that they talked to, he makes a statement about how, you know, the bad guys caught because us, the good guys, do the work. But then he's like, but we make mistakes. So do doctors. Why would you put that in here? Unless you really want people to have reasonable doubt about this being Bryan Kohberger. Why would you put that in there? Because it fuels it, which is what they love to do. And then they have the TikTokers talking about the 12 pings and all the crazy stuff. And they're like, oh, it'll tell that he's around there within meters. No, not cell towers. You mean within miles? You mean within 10 or 15 miles, the cell towers? Yeah. But then we have already information about the fact that there's no finalized cast report. It's all just a draft. So how would they even really know based on the timing that we know now that the PCA was written versus what was it, January 26th, where Ann Taylor said the cast report was nothing but a draft? They literally are doing all of this on incomplete information. It's ridiculously scary. I do like the fact that they showed that all these TikTokers that are now condemning Bryan Kohberger were having serious questions when it came to the PCA because of the timeline they gave. And they mentioned how Kohberger apparently got from like that Indian Hills area all the way over to Taylor in like 1 minute, but it was like 3 miles long. And everyone was like, how's that possible? How is that actually possible? Given the speed limit and like the time and the length, it's just impossible. So that's why a lot of people have issues with, do they even have the right car that they're looking at and piecing together? And that's actually what I'm wondering if Ann Taylor's waiting for. Like, are they taking all of that 51 terabytes and piecing together every microsecond and little micro mile that he drove to like show the complete timeline of whenever he left his apartment at 2:44 and then showed back up? I really do wonder if that's what she's waiting on, because it sounds like they're trying to just like create the entire timeline. But that's the only thing when she's talking about how they're trying to match up audio and video. Because I'm sorry, you're trying to match up audio and video, then you're trying to give me bullshit. I don't want it. And they're talking about the K-bar, and they're talking about the knife sheath, and they're talking about the DNA. Okay, we're going to end up talking more in depth on that at some point. I know that I've said that before, but again, I'm going to keep reiterating. Your girl is busy, okay? But it's going to be coming soon, I promise. I should have delved deeper into that a long time ago, and that's my bad. But we're gonna do it soon. It's just kind of funny to me that they're expecting us to believe that this man wore gloves in Albertsons and to like, you know, pick trash, but he wouldn't have worn gloves while he was committing the crime or cleaning the weapon or touching the weapon at any point in time. He wouldn't have worn gloves. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I was actually like so shocked right here. I felt like I almost had a mini stroke because for once, and for only once, I agreed with something that Jennifer Coffindaffer said. She said that the DNA on the knife sheath is the only reason why Bryan Kohberger stands accused today. And that's the truth. Because nothing else makes sense. There's no connection to the victims. And if there is, they haven't proven it whatsoever. The stuff with the car is insane. The PCA doesn't make any sense. The fact they had to go take his parents' trash instead of getting warrants to do so whenever he was still in the area. Okay, any one of those states could have gotten his DNA from anywhere. They could have gotten it from the trash can whenever he emptied his trash at his apartment. They could have gotten it out the dumpster. They could have watched him and made sure that it was his whenever they did it. They could have done it at the college. After hours, they could have gone in and done it. They never did it here locally. They waited till they got all the way over there. But want us to believe they had eyes on him since before he left? I doubt it. I really do. I don't understand this part. I don't understand why Olivia would be so curious as to what Rory from Thou Shalt Not Kill cared about this case whenever he'd only been on YouTube for 2 months. I find it interesting that of all the people And this has nothing to do with anything. I've already got stupid comments. I'm like, oh, you're jealous. No, let me tell you something. I turned down sponsorships left and right. I'm going to do an entire video about that. Okay. You see the links that I have in my videos, those are things that I actually use. Those are my very personal referral codes for Nord, for Binoid, for Ibotta, the thing that I use to save. I really have almost saved like almost $5,000 on groceries and household stuff with Ibotta. Like for real, for real, for real. Okay. Your girl is an extreme couponer. But I've also gotten like sponsorship requests from NordVPN and Atlas VPN and Parade Underwear and Foom, which is like this like nicotine, stop smoking cessation, whatever product. Okay. I don't want to be bought. You're never going to find me on anything mainstream, at least nothing with my approval. Okay. I'm not going to come out here and do a sponsorship. I'm not bought that way. So I have nothing to be jealous of because I could be in those positions if I wanted to, believe me. I have the chances. I just refuse to be quieted and told what to do. I already don't like having to have a boss in my job. Okay. I'm really trying to get away from having a boss. I want to be my own boss all the way around. I definitely don't want to be told what to say. So no, there's no jealousy. Nowhere. Just because I have a comment or an opinion doesn't make me jealous, because if I wasn't on YouTube and me and you were just sitting in a coffee shop somewhere having this conversation and I had the exact same opinion, would you call me jealous then? No, probably not. So whenever you consider the fact that Olivia, who was again personally contacted by the Goncalveses, suddenly wanted to know what Rory said whenever he barely has had a channel, that doesn't make sense to me. It really just doesn't. It's odd. That's really the only word that I can think of. And that's literally like, it's the word I wrote down. So in the dark, in pink lighting, is apparently the way that everyone on TikTok researches the case and reads over court documents. Weird. I just turned on my regular light with my light off in my room, and I think I like it better. Let me know. Maybe I'll just start doing my videos in the dark from now on. Now, they mentioned Papa Rogers. Again, I guess that's another one I need to look into, because I do find the way that they presented it interesting. If I didn't already know the conversation, I would be really convinced that Papa Rogers was Bryan Kohberger. I really, 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 really would. They mentioned the camera, and they mentioned how the PCA threw everyone for a loop whenever they mentioned how Dylan heard all the noises, and then they're talking about how she was frozen, okay? But then they also talk about, and I'm so glad that they mentioned this in here, that the two roommates were texting each other during the commission of the crime, during the timeline of the crime, because I have been saying that forever, that they ended the timing of the crime based on the two surviving roommates' phones activity, that the suspect vehicle number 1 left at 4:20 in the morning, but that the phone activity put the ending of the crime 5 minutes after the car would have already left. Okay? So you can't sit there and tell me that little Miss Dillon was in so much frozen shock and fear that she couldn't call 911 for 8 hours. But the cops know that the two of them were freaking talking to each other while everything was happening. Miss me with the bullshit. And after they mention this is where all the stuff about Kim comes out. And this is the big reason why I have problems with the way that she came out and said her story, because it is just her story, just hers. Her daughter refuses to say a word and is, like I mentioned, not talking to her, if this person even really is Kim, because you guys know by now I have problems with believing that. And then they show Dave. Now, I already knew this was going to be on here, guys. Just because I didn't mention it in my first episode didn't mean I didn't know this was happening. I've known about this since Linda Lane, and I will repeat that over and over again. Several of us here knew about this since Linda Lane. Okay, so they did stuff to his voice and hit his face, which we already knew. He was trying to be completely anonymous. And remember, there was like some fraternity that talks to, I believe the channel is called What's the Obsession? And they wanted to like find Dave and talk to him. Okay, all this crazy. All right. Now, conveniently, when him and Olivia are sitting down to go through his Snapchat history, there's like a 12-hour gap where it shows that he wasn't active. Now he's claiming, oh my God, where did it go? Like, he's sitting there acting like he didn't know that it wasn't going to show up. Like, I'm sorry, but how do you like agree to be interviewed about this thing that you made very well known that you know, okay? And you didn't like You didn't like prepare yourself with screenshots of your history from before. You didn't check to see what your stuff was going to show before you did this interview. Like after you agreed to this, you didn't check on this. Home dude is sitting there with Olivia acting like he's just like, oh, where did it go? Like he didn't know. Miss me with it. I'm so tired of it. Now, of course, the retired captain, they have to put these little bits and pieces in there. And of course, Jennifer Coffindaffer is agreeing with this sentiment that that gap of time is somewhere. And yeah, the FBI can go in and request things to not be published. Okay, that's not be published. That's not removing entire data segments from your back end information that you can no longer see. So I know that for like physical things, like they can be actually deleted off of your physical phone. There can be things physically deleted off of your computers, off your laptop, off of your electronics. But when it comes to the back end information, I mean, I'm sure that they can. I'm sure they can. But why would they? Why would they? And that's another reason why it's hard to like try to figure out where your opinion on all of this wants to go. Because if this stuff really is true, of course they would try to hide it. Of course they would rip everybody's social media back end information out so that it didn't go all over the place. Of course they would. Of course they would. But then why would they be allowing them out here to talk? No, the cops aren't stupid. If they knew who Dave was, they'd have came knocking on his door already. If Kim was really involved in this, they would have came and told her, shut up, chick. That's what they would have done. Okay? So I don't understand. This is such like a roller coaster. It's literally a seesaw. It's so much. It's so much. Now, Jennifer Coffindaffer makes a real stupid statement about how, you know, we and all these like TikTokers, they only want to know. We only want to know because it's clicks and views. Well, Miss Ma'am, you only want to know so you can keep getting them checks. Okay? She got paid for Paramount. She gets paid from News Nation. She gets paid to go on 48 Hours. She gets paid to go on Dateline. She gets paid. Okay? She's a hypocrite. Sit down, Jennifer. So they talk about how these TikTokers are just trying to brand themselves. And of course, JLR is talking about how he makes a significant amount of money off of his merch. So Ashley Banfield has literally branded herself because all she wears is beige that matches her hair. And that is what she's known for. She has a signature. That is her brand. Brian Enton has a brand. All these mainstream people, that's what they have done. They've branded themselves. There are some mainstream correspondents that are a hell of a lot more popular than others because they're good at branding themselves. What is with all of the hypocrisy in this damn thing? Shannon Gray makes a great point here. Not sorry about agreeing with him. I do not agree that any books, anything finalized like that, and I don't agree about these docuseries either, guys. Like, there's one thing about us coming here on social media and trying to like talk about things in real time. But whenever you're creating books, whenever you're creating movies, docuseries, documentaries, those are things in my brain anyway, and at least it used to be back in the day, that were created for things that were done. Okay? Books about what? Things that are not completed? Stories that are left unfinished? It's a waste. Now, as much as I don't really like the way that the Jenna girl, you know, throws F-bombs all over the place, she said something that I've been saying for a long time, and it's that they fuel this chaos. The mainstream media and the cops alike, like they sit here and they complain about us, but they're the ones feeding us. Okay? They're the ones literally pouring gasoline on this huge dumpster fire that is this case, and they know it. So I don't know why they sit there and like talk all kind of shit and act like they hate us. We're the reasons why these cases continue to be talked about, why these police departments continue to keep having the light shined on them, and they're getting all of this attention that they love so much, because that's what they do like. They like the attention. They can lie about it all they want to, but they do. They like the fact that all eyes are on Latah County. Don't let them fool you for a second. Now, they end this by talking about how a lot of people believe that if this was Bryan, there's no way that he did this by himself. And then there's talking about how come there's no other DNA in that house? All these other people that were in that house, how come they're not talking about any other DNA in that house? Paramount, you couldn't have done better editing in the way that you did this, because y'all damn well know that there's been 3 unidentified male DNAs. Now, told to the public. And you're going to just let that statement out on Paramount. That's a lie. That is a freaking lie. They then talk about how Bethany has exculpatory evidence. They don't go really far into it. They just talk about how it's there. And now this Jenna girl, as soon as I like what she has to say, she goes and says something crazy. And I've never heard this before ever, guys. So if you've heard this, please let me know in the comments, because I've been on this case since day one and I ain't never heard this before. Okay. This Jenna chick says that apparently Kohberger told Ann Taylor, who actually did the crime, and that he was willing to help them catch the person. When was this ever reported as being a fact? When was this ever reported that Bryan Kohberger physically and literally said this to his attorney? I would love to know. Okay, time to wash my hair. I got to get dinner cooked, and then on to episode 3. See y'all.